Modi government argues that contemporary India has moved into a completely different phase. The country's GDP has expanded enormously since independence, and India today ranks among the world's largest economies. The government frequently highlights strong economic growth despite global disruptions such as COVID-19 pandemic, geopolitical conflicts, and supply chain shockers. Supporters describe India as a global growth engine, increasingly central to international economic discussions. Education provides another important and interesting lens through which to examine the evolution of the Indian state. Nehru is widely credited with laying the foundations of modern technical education by establishing the first IITs and the AIIMS. Those institutions became symbol of India's developmental ambitions and scientific aspirations. The Modi government emphasizes that the rapid expansion of such institutions happened under it, pointing to the increase in IITs, IIMs and AIIMS over the last decade as evidence of efforts to scale educational infrastructure for a much larger youth population. Foreign policy perhaps offers one of the most debated comparisons. Nehru's doctrine of non-alignment emerged in the context of the Cold War, when newly independent nations sought to avoid becoming pawns in the rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union. Non-alignment became a defining feature of India's global identity. Modi's foreign policy is often described as multi-alignment. Rather than avoiding engagement with competing blocs, India today actively cultivates relationships across geopolitical divides. New Delhi engages simultaneously with Washington, Moscow, European capitals, Gulf nations, and the global south. Supporters argue that this approach reflects India's emergence as a more confident and an influential global actor. India's international profile has undoubtedly expanded, whether through G20 leadership, strategic partnerships, or diaspora outreach. India's visibility on the world stage is arguably higher than any point in its post-independence history. The government points to Modi's frequent international engagements and the growing recognition accorded to India globally as evidence of this transformation. Another aspect emphasized by the BJP leaders is social representation within governments. They argue that the composition of the Council of Ministers and the Modi reflects broader representation from scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and other backward classes than was visible during the early decades of the Republic. This argument forms part of the BJP's larger political narrative that governance has become more socially inclusive and representative. Infrastructure has become one of the defining themes of the Modi years. Expressways, airports, railways, modernization, digital infrastructure, and highway construction feature prominently in the government's narrative. Supporters contrast this with the more limited physical infrastructure available in the decades immediately after independence. While Nehru's era focused on foundational projects such as dams and